Hey, so if you're wondering why you're getting a video on a Saturday instead of a Sunday, that's because this video was made in collaboration with the Roving Naturalist. More info at the end of the video. Also, there may be a few spoilers for Avengers Infinity War here and there, so don't say I didn't warn you. So I recently watched Avengers Infinity War, and after the end, everyone was wondering how Marvel would rectify this in its upcoming movies. I, however, wondered something else. What would happen on a society level if half the population all suddenly disappeared from existence? In Infinity War, Thanos' plan is to solve the overpopulation of the universe by thinning out half the population of every planet. It is thought that, in committing the penultimate genocide, the universe's available resources would be more readily available to everyone left. But this is of course a rather extreme interpretation of the proverb, if you want to make an omelet you have to break a few eggs. So what would happen if half of the population suddenly disappeared? Now, I'm not going to go into details like how everyone would die in a realistic scenario, or whether or not Thanos even should have won, or anything like that. I just wanted to discuss what would happen if the world's population suddenly shrank from 7.5 billion to 3.75 billion, about where it was in 1971. Literally just that. Well, first off, people turning to dust obviously solves the need for mass graves or anything like that, but it would arguably lead to a whole new set of issues. Because people are suddenly disappearing from existence at random, day-to-day life would be hugely interrupted, to say the least. From car crashes to plane crashes to helicopter crashes to some things not involving crashes, like, oh I don't know, the massive political vacuum that this would leave. It would be a lot like life after people light. Then again, it does sound like the easiest way to get out of a relationship. It's likely that this alone would cause the deaths of millions more people, unless this was already taken into account by the Infinity Gauntlet, which is actually kind of freaky to have to plan out. Something like this seems like it would be the ultimate challenge our species has ever faced. Except something like this has happened before. About 700 years ago, in fact, when the Black Death happened and wiped out about a third to one-half of Europe's population, and much of Asia's, between the years 1347 and 1350. Sure, 75 to 200 million people worldwide over the course of 3 years doesn't sound as impressive as 3.75 billion people in a matter of minutes, but that's still like business as usual right now, and realizing that by 2021 you've managed to lose Russia. These were still big numbers, especially with an initial world population of just 450 million. Some cities in Europe were almost completely deserted as a result, except for in Poland. Poland was completely fine. The Black Death set back Europe's population growth, obviously, but it also changed the face of European society, or at least flipped the switch, as you'll know from my Martin Luther video. During the Black Death, people truly thought it was the apocalypse, and many even sought after scapegoats. Put it this way, religious attendance would definitely skyrocket in this scenario. So what did it do for Europe? As much as I personally disagree with Thanos, you can argue about that in the comments, the Black Death actually did do some good for European society, which was breaking at the seams from overpopulation. Just before the plague, Europe was suffering from famines and was struggling to feed everyone, and while things weren't rosy after the plague, especially given all the aftershocks, there was suddenly more food and resources for everyone, and since there were fewer people to work the land, landlords found that they actually had to be nicer to serfs if anything was to get done. In fact, scientific studies and archaeological evidence have found that survivors of the plague and their descendants actually lived longer, healthier lives, and the lack of available physical labor to work the manors actually opened up the market for better technologies that required less human labor, like the printing press. So if that's not a good excuse for genocide, I don't know what is. Disclaimer, genocide is a really not good thing. Don't ever do it, seriously. The real underlying question to this is perhaps if Thanos' plan was successfully executed in the 21st century, would it yield the same results? To which I would say, I don't know for certain. Thanos' plan was to solve overpopulation, the same way the Black Death already did. And while overpopulation and the prospect of 8 billion coming around the corner are both pretty scary, we're not going to continue growing like this forever. Kurzgesagt explains this so much better, but even if the population shrank to under 4 billion, birth rates are lowering enough right now, so much so that the population might not even make it back to 7 billion if this happened. And in real life, the UN already forecasts that the 12 billionth human won't be coming along anytime soon. The excess use of available resources, though, is still a serious issue. But if people were to suddenly drop dead rather than turning to dust, that would also be a huge problem. a problem my friend Cheryl, the Roving Naturalist, explains in her new video explaining the scientific and ecological aspects of 3.75 billion people suddenly dying, without turning to dust.
Much like an ecosystem can have a carrying capacity or a limit to the number and type of living things it can support, an ecosystem can also have a maximum amount of death and decay it can handle without adverse effects.
Go check her video and subscribe to her channel and tell her KhAnubis said hi. Still here? Well, thank you for watching this video, and, well, I'm gonna be honest, Infinity War was definitely worth seeing, but the ending was definitely quite a stirring surprise. I haven't really been able to get off my mind recently. As always, please be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to learn something new every Sunday. Okay, let's give this a try. Did Thanos kill me? Ah, mother...